How do you know what you believe? Not what you agree with, not what you repeat, what you actually believe. What does that word even mean to you? Is a belief something you chose or something that slowly settled in because it was never challenged? When you say this is what I believe, are you describing a conclusion or a habit? Is it something you arrived at through examination or something that became familiar through repetition? How many of your beliefs were formed deliberately, and how many were absorbed without permission? From family, from school, from culture, from praise, from punishment? How many ideas did you accept simply because resisting them felt costly? Costly in approval, costly in belonging, costly in safety. At what age did your beliefs start to feel like yours? And what changed at that point? Your thinking or just your confidence? How often do you confuse familiarity with truth? If you've heard something your entire life, does that make it accurate or just familiar enough to feel unquestionable? What beliefs feel obvious to you, and how did they become obvious? Was it evidence or repetition? When something feels just true, do you ask why, or do you assume that the feeling itself is proof? How many beliefs have you tested? Not defended, not explained, tested. How many have survived serious questioning, and how many have only survived agreement? If someone asked you why you believe what you believe, could you answer without repeating phrases you've heard before? Without borrowing authority? Without pointing to consensus? Without saying everyone knows? What beliefs do you protect most strongly? Why those? What would happen if they collapsed? Would you lose clarity or would you lose comfort? How much of what you believe is shaped by the people around you? If you were born into a different family, a different culture, a different time, how many of your beliefs would remain the same? Which ones feel personal and which ones feel inherited? When you encounter a belief that contradicts yours, do you get curious or defensive? What does that reaction tell you? Are you protecting truth or identity? How often do you mistake emotional relief for accuracy? When a belief calms your anxiety, does that make it true or just soothing? When an idea gives your life coherence, does that make it accurate or simply useful? What beliefs help you function and what beliefs prevent you from seeing clearly? How many opinions do you hold because questioning them would create uncertainty? How many conclusions do you defend because you don't want to reopen old questions? What ideas feel too dangerous to examine? Why those? Who taught you they were dangerous? How many beliefs exist in your life not because they're true, but because they reduce friction, because they make decisions easier, because they simplify complexity, because they tell you who the good people are and who the bad ones are? When did believing become easier than thinking? How do you tell the difference between a belief you've chosen and one you've merely inherited? Is it the strength of conviction or the depth of examination? Does confidence prove truth or does it just silence doubt? Have you ever been completely wrong about something you were certain about? What did that feel like? Did it make you more careful with belief or more desperate to be certain elsewhere? How much of what you believe is built on evidence? How much is built on memory? How much is built on emotion? How much is built on fear of being wrong? If a belief has never been questioned, in what sense is it truly yours? If you've never examined an idea, is it a belief or just an assumption you live inside? What happens when a belief feels personal but turns out to be borrowed? What happens when something you thought was you turns out to be learned? Would you feel betrayed or freed? How many of your beliefs exist to protect a version of yourself that no longer exists? How many ideas are you loyal to simply because you once needed them? What would it cost you to admit uncertainty, control, status, direction, the comfort of thinking you already know? If someone removed every belief you've never examined, what would remain? Would there be clarity underneath or just silence? Is silence something to fear or something you've never learned to sit with? What if belief isn't something you possess, but something you continuously negotiate? What if knowing what you believe requires questioning it again and again? What if the moment you stop examining a belief is the moment it stops being yours? How do you know what you believe? And how much of it have you actually chosen?